Hello, my name is John Rose, and in this video I'd like to take a closer look at the dark side of secular humanism. Now this will be a follow-up video on the video I did yesterday, Secular Humanist versus Scientific Pantheist, and that was actually a follow-up video of the video I did earlier that day. So I did two videos yesterday, and the first one was Pharaoh's favorite formula. And the purpose of this video was to remind everyone that we have to stay united. We have to support one another. We have to realize that we have a common enemy, so to speak, and we can't be distracted and fight amongst ourselves. And remember, we are either getting reconnected or we're getting distracted. And most of what happens to us is a distraction. Just about everything is a distraction. Why? Because we're not correcting the fall of mankind. And the biggest way of all that we're distracted is divide and conquer. And that's what this video is all about. If those who haven't seen that, I'll give you a quick rundown of this. Here are my notes. I started off the video with, well, let me do this real quick. This is what the video would look like. Had you seen it, the first part of it's not copyrighted in any way. So I had two series of quotes here that take about a half a minute to show. And you can pause this anytime and read it in its entirety if you can't read and listen to me at the same time, obviously. And this is extremely important because most of us are slaves and we really don't know it, so it doesn't matter what religion we are if we don't have a religion or whatever. We all have to unite and realize that we're all slaves. We have something in common. Now, the next quote about Martin Luther King had everything to do with a speech that he gave, or is his last speech actually, the mountaintop speech, very famous speech. And what I can do now is actually come back to my notes, and that's what you'll notice I have. After those, you'll see here's the Martin Luther speech that lasts a little over a minute. And I actually ended, now you're listening to the video or you're listening to the actual words that he speaks in my video that I have. But at the very end, I end the video with what he says, and here it is. I'm not going to go through it right now, but you can screen save it and listen to that. So it's all about getting united. We got to stay together. As he says up here, we have to maintain unity. That's how he ends it, maintain unity. I love the way he pile drives here. Got to stay together, got to stay together. Maintain unity. Slaves get together, slaves get together. Beginning of getting out of slavery, maintain unity. In fact, his whole speech was, I love the way he pile drive. Anyway, that's how that video goes. Now what you have after Martin Luther King's speech is then you'll have this section right here that's quoted. And I can probably, here it is right here. Perfect timing, look at that. How lucky can I have gotten there? The history of the House of Rothschild, and again, I'm not going to read this, but it's all about Albert Pike and how he was, he had the military blueprint for 3 world wars. The first was against Russia, bring down the Tsar. Second was Germany. Third is to get everyone to hate the Muslims. It's easy to do, just get some Muslims to do bad things and everyone hates all the Muslims. This is all orchestrated, it's by design to get us divided amongst ourselves, so that's the key. And then after this video is probably the reason why you guys can't see this in other countries. Perhaps there might be copyrighted music in it, but it's probably more the contents of what's in it, and that's the rivals. And I talked about this before. When I first found this, I watched it in its entirety, and it was over 8 hours. And this is one of them that I showed, the story of Islam. And it's a really good story that illustrates that all religions basically are the same. And we have to stop looking at the differences and start looking at what's in common. They have a real good scene with Malcolm X and how he was embracing Islam. And again, there's a confrontation later in this little 10-minute video or so that it's in here, where they're explaining the differences between Islam and Christianity, and there are so many similarities it's not even funny. 2 rays from the same light. The difference can be the line in the sand, and there always will be those lines in the sand. There's always going to be little differences, but we got to stop focusing on that stage. And that's sort of part of the problem with secular humanism, is that they're stuck in the 3rd stage. where they are more focused on the differences instead of the similarities. So when you go from the third stage of spirituality to the fourth stage, that's what happens. You stop looking at the differences, you look at what's similar, and we got too much in common, and the biggest thing is we have a common enemy, and that's what's actually behind humanism, secular humanism. That's what you have to understand. Now, if we come over here and look at my file, and here's secular humanism, here's my file preview, Wikipedia. Now, if we read what comes from Wikipedia, we'd be really impressed with humanism. Why would we want to reject, why would we want to use human reason and ethics and reject dogma and superstition? I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it? But you have to understand a whole lot about what you're reading. Number one, it's coming from Wikipedia. Can't trust anything from Wikipedia when it comes to anything of any importance, like medicine, nutrition, money, anything that's relative to help us get out of the cave. You're going to get misinformation that's going to make everything look good. Now, what we have to understand with secular humanism, to really understand, is you got to go to Yusuf Mullins. Now, this guy has a whole lot more pieces than just about anybody I've ever seen. He actually doesn't have really the most important pieces, the raw food connection. But when it comes to understanding how the world works and tracing it, and he really put it all together. And this is part of the preference of his book, Curse of Canaan. He said, he writes, I was also able to find the sources of satanic ideology, which has been consistently employed to deceive humanity and to trick them into becoming unwitting tools of the satanic programs, an ideology which we encounter today in various forms such as communism, Fabianism, secular humanism, and other disguises. And you have to realize how tricky the people of the world are. Remember, the people who rule the world are con artists. They're psychopaths. They're masters of illusion. They're magicians and masters of misdirection. It's all about tricking us and keeping us distracted. And that's what all of these programs are. If you look at the Fabian Society, real quickly, remember, the urge to save humanity is almost always a false face for the urge to rule it. H.L. Mencken. Another meaningful statement is found on page 152. That's in Pike's book. Masonry is activism. These three words explain the furious involvement of Freemasons in every type of activist movement in the United States, whether it is feminism, humanism, racial integrations, or communism. Pike had laid down the law. Masons must be activists. They have obeyed his dictum. As a result, much of the drive as well as financing for all types of activist agitation in the United States comes directly from the hidden hand of the Masonic order. Whenever you see a group marching in this country, you'll probably find that Masons are the instigators. Once again, the urge to save it is a false-face urge to rule it. We're being tricked and we're being fooled. Now, what are the Fabians? Well, the Fabian Society was founded in 1984, and the Fabian plan is to implement world socialism incrementally through legislation. That's slowly what they've been doing. Again, it's incremental. They know that it's going to take a long time to do this, and they're slowly hacking away at us and tearing away at us, and most of us are totally oblivious to what's going on. But that's basically what's happening with this, is they trick us into thinking, oh, we're going to do something great, like, let's say, feminism. Well, wait a second, John, what's wrong with feminism? Exactly, that's the whole point. They take a cause that needs to be addressed, like this, and they right the wrong, but once again, the urge to save it's always a false face to rule it. Activism is always initiated by these guys who control everything. They're doing it for a reason. Why was feminism? Why would they promote something that would be good for us? Because it was their way to tear down the family structure. Get the women to work. That there's more money in the tax base, right? But the main thing is take away the family structure, so that then the government can then control the people and educate the people. When you can control what people know, you control what they do. And we don't know squat because they've been controlling information for over 3,000 years, according to Yusuf Mullins in this book, The Curse of Canaan. For the last 3,000 years, these people have usurped the educational system and the priesthood. So we don't really know what's going on. So indeed, here's chapter 1, the war against Shem. Indeed, the great movement of modern history has been to disguise the presence of evil on the earth, to make light of it, to convince humanity that evil is to be tolerated, treated with greater understanding or negotiated with, but under no circumstances should it ever be forcibly opposed. This is the principal point of what has come to be known as today's liberalism, more popularly known as secular humanism. The popular and apparently sensible appeal of humanism, yeah, doesn't sound great, how could you not be a humanist, is that humanity should always place human interests first. The problem is that this very humanism can be traced in an unbroken line all the way back to the biblical curse of Canaan. Humanism is the logical result of the demonology of history. Folks, you got to get educated and understand these people have been doing the same thing for a long time. They're controlling us, and most of us are completely oblivious to it, and they hide it. They make it sound like it's really going to be good. And again, the whole point of it is to downplay evil. This is why there's not just a dark side to secular humanism, but there's a dark side to religion and spirituality. They've done the same thing in those beliefs and paradigms. They've come in and bastardized it in their own little way by taking away our responsibility. You're born in sin. It's not your fault. No, they're tricking you and fooling you. There's nothing you can do about it, you see. It's part of your nature. Man has a propensity for evil, and there's not a thing you can do about it except it. Poppycock. They're tricking us and fooling us. That's what they want us to believe. They also want to believe there's good in everybody. Everybody's got good in them. No, they don't. Not the people who are doing what they're doing to us, and we can't even comprehend what they're doing because our brains can't think that way. So we have to understand that there is a presence out there that is downright evil. They're keeping knowledge away from having this planet be paradise. And every time anyone tries to prove it, they're demonized. That's what happened to Germany and Japan last century. We don't learn from history because we don't have access to it. We don't know. So if we continue on in chapter 2, here he talks about secular humanism again. If I just glance through here, this is where that part came in, where I said Masonry is activism. That comes in this chapter also. I'm just going to kind of scroll through this, so you guys screen save this whenever you want to. Now when we get to chapter 3, the whole chapter is on secular humanism. Again, does Eustace Mullins know something maybe you guys don't? Remember, it's easy to get tricked into this belief system and think that you're doing something good. So once again, I'm not going to read any of this. I could take forever reading through this. I'm just going to slowly go through this so you guys can screen save what part of the file preview I have. And you can read it at your own leisure if you want to. And I always hate it when people do that because I like to multitask and listen to it while I'm doing something. So sorry for those who want to listen to it instead of read it. And this will be the very last chapter in 3 to designate where chapter 4 starts. And again, he mentions it in chapter 4 also. And it's interesting. The Canaanites, the Phoenicians, again, he points out who does what and how they did it. And you can read for yourself. And you can always download the book. You can do a Google search on this and find copies of this book all over the internet. And it's an interesting read. Here we go right here. Goals of secular humanism in its attack on the family and the plan to control the education of children. Isn't that what I just said a moment ago? That's what they're trying to do. That's the whole feminist movement, don't you see? They're attacking the family. They want they want the kids to be educated and brainwashed by the government. Easier to control. We gotta get back to where we were, my friends. Chapter 5, he talks about it also. The doctrine of secular humanism. Again, screenshot it if you're interested. And now he talks about the Cabal, French Revolution, Civil War. Remember, I did a video recently on the Civil War. And they put a lot of money into making that thing happen. as you can see. A lot of reading for you guys. Again, if you would prefer just to download, that'd make it a lot easier. Florence, the birthplace of secular humanism. Chapter 11, this would be the last chapter, I believe. Canaanite propagandist. Curse of Canaan. That's the book, my friends. You got to get it. You got to read it. They preach against secular humanism and communism without any inkling. See, now he's talking about the bakers. This is all about the bakers. Now, this first paragraph isn't really related. It just sort of sets up the bakers, the PTL. Hope I'm not offending anyone else again. Praise the Lord. You got to know, my friends, what your money's doing. How they're actually part of something that's trying to trick you. Become educated. Read a version that might be different than what you've been told, and you might find out that we're being tricked. So that's all I'm going to do today. I'm going to make this really quick. And there is a dark side to humanism, secular humanism, and it all has to do with their ulterior motive. They're out to do something else besides help us. That's the last thing they want to do, is actually help us. I did a video on the raw food and cooked food collectivism connection, which is sort of related to this, a little bit different. But they're similar. They're very similar. Collectivism, it sounds really good, just like humanism. It sounds really good. And of course, you'll have to it's not the same way. The things are a lot different the way collectivism enters into it. So if you're interested, that's a good video that's somewhat related to this. Anyway, I always want to thank everybody for contributing, there's my baby, to my comment section. And the thumbs up, you're really supporting me in that area too. The subscriptions, they keep going, keep sharing. And remember, it's only going to be a matter of moments before I say something that's going to offend you. Don't desert me just because I finally said something that will piss you off. Stick around long enough, I'll piss you off. But don't let that run you away, because this is too important. It's bigger than you. It's bigger than me. It's the solution we've been looking for, my friends. Indeed, there is one thing stronger than all the armies in the world, and it's an idea whose time has come. That's the first of my three-step process. That's the solid food vacation. That's the ultimate solution for all these things, because once we get reconnected, everything else we've been talking about, those are all downstream, and most of the things downstream we don't want to mess with. There are some things we gotta mess with, have to, but the vast majority of the downstream stuff is a distraction. Don't get distracted. If it's not solving a problem, you're getting distracted. Keep it simple. And remember, when you guys do this, you're in for a treat.